One of the things that I have watched quite frequently is the way that people respond to being mobbed on Twitter.
Yeah.
You know, now I've almost stopped looking at Twitter. It's been about 3 months that I've taken a Twitter hiatus, let's say. I still post, I don't even have my password anymore. I send what I want to post to a third party and they post it because it keeps me out of the...
An antiseptic distance.
That's right, exactly. And that's exactly the right way of thinking about it. You know, people, civilized people, and I mean that in civilized, socialized people, cannot tolerate being mobbed. Because,
no, they can't.
And there's a reason for that. You see, you said, with regards to the British Columbia Human Rights Tribunal, you know, if there's 16 people on one side and one on the other, you might be thinking that the 16 people are right.
More or less.
Right. But then you think of the situation where you've said something on Twitter and, you know, 1,000 people mob you publicly. I mean, your first response, your first response is going to be to examine your own conscience and see how you transgressed. It's not really much different psychologically. I mean, it's lesser, I suppose, but it's not that much different than waking up one morning and coming to your door and finding a mob of your neighbors angrily aggregated on your lawn. You know, it's a terrible shock for people, and it really hurts them. You know, they're often, by all accounts, you know, damaged for lengthy periods of time by this, and their first impulse is to apologize, which is truly the wrong thing. Like the right thing to do.
It's stand.
Well, the right thing to do is to understand that if you haven't done anything wrong, you don't apologize. Now that's very difficult. It's very difficult, and then to wait, because if you wait 2 weeks, people will come to your defense.
Yeah, they will.
But it takes the people who will come to your defense 2 weeks to get their act together, where it takes the activists who are unbelievably organized 15 seconds to mob you.
Well, there's two points to draw out of there. First of all, because you have now been almost fire-hosed into the world of celebrity, multimedia, and vast attention. I've dabbled in a lesser zone for a long while, so you adjust to the kind of swirl, okay? But what I've never forgotten, and I'm serious, is that people who are not in it at all, my father, or the mechanic down the road, or the doctor over here, doesn't have to be class. If you haven't had media, and if you haven't adjusted to it, and suddenly your name, and I'm just backing up your point, your name suddenly becomes the center of some great Twitter snowstorm in pejorative terms, and people are speaking of you with the most vulgar responses. It is a terror. It isn't to me, because I dismiss it, but people who have not experienced it, it is really, really, really something that it's an unbearable pain.
Yes.
And they bring it down with club force and the great megaphones of national networks in the States, etc. You can expunge a person's personality with this kind of brutality.
Yes, well, and it's permanent, right? Because the record never disappears.